Hi guys, this is another video which I have prepared for intercompany stock transport orders. This will give you a brief idea of how STOs are set up and processed into SAP systems.
I'll try to explain the business scenario first and then explain you the setup that I have done. Um, After that, we can move on to see the customization part. And once that is done, we'll check out and create some samples in the IDIS to understand how exactly the system behaves for an intercompany stock transport order process. So basically, let me explain you the business scenario, the background for this process. Why do we need a stock transport order process, and what is the difference between the intercompany sales process and the stock transport order process? Basically, these are two different processes. Keep that in mind. The intercompany sales process is something wherein you have a customer involved, a final customer involved. If you want more details, you can refer my previous video for intercompany sales process, which explains the way you need to configure the intercompany sales process and what happens and what are the parties involved in the intercompany sales process. Today, we are dealing with intercompany stock transport order process. So here there is no end customer involved. Here in this process, there are the companies belonging to the same group who are having a business transaction. So the partners are one company, and there would be another company which belongs to the same group, and they manufacture the same product, but they are geographically located apart, and hence there becomes a need to transfer the product from one plant of one company code to another plant which belongs to another company code, thus leading to a business transaction wherein products are delivered or transferred, and even billing transactions come into picture, and that's why we call it as the intercompany STO process. We also have a normal STO process which doesn't have the intercompany part in it. So that process comes into picture when you are transferring goods from the plants of the same company code. Let's say you want to transfer a, a product that is manufactured within one plant um, of a company code to another plant of the same company code. In that case, you will have the STO process coming into picture. So intercompany STO and STO are two different processes basically. Let me just jot it down over here. STO and intercompany STO. So what happens here is that, wait, so you see STO, intercompany STO, and then we also have the intercompany sales process, which you need to refer my previous video. So see, the difference would lie here. So plants of same company code, you have plants, the transaction between the plants of same company code. Okay, so what is intercompany STO? Now, intercompany STO means you have a transaction between two plants which belong to two different company codes. So as you see this the diagram that I have represented over here in pink and sky blue color, you see there are two different company codes which belong to the same group. So 3000 is the group, and you have two company codes under it, 3000 and 4500, kind of separate legal entities which have their own statements, financial statements prepared, and they also have their own plans under which they manufacture the product and sell it to the end customers. So now the scenario that I'm talking about would be, let's say 4500 also manufacture the same product, let's say material 938, and that product is not available at with 4,500 at the moment, and they somehow need it. In that case, what they'll do is that they'll procure the material from their sister company, or yeah, and have it into their plant so that they could satisfy the requirement that they have at the moment. So this is the case of intercompany STO. Now, intercompany sales processes, you have a customer, you have plant 1, which is similar to and plant 2. So these plants don't represent the same company code. Plant 1 belongs to company code 1, plant 2 represents company code 2. Hence, so this customer's requirement of having n number of products is not satisfied using the products that are there in this plant, because this plant doesn't have an existing stock which needs to be fulfilled within the requested delivery date. Hence, what this plant does is that it procures material from this plant and directly delivers it to the customer. So this is the intercompany sales process. In intercompany stock transport, you just have plant 1, similar to that, plant 2, and it's just that this plant doesn't have the required number of quantity of the product which needs to be delivered or some to the customer, or required for internal processing or some other reason. So what this plant does is that it will procure the material from this plant and take it over here. So there's no customer involved. You just have the transfer between the plants of different company codes. So it's important to note the difference between these three processes before we proceed ahead with the design and sample creation in IDOS. So I have set up two enterprise structures. As you see over here, I have represented using the color pink and sky blue color. So you have two company codes which are separate legal entities, and they have their own plant, own purchasing organization, and their own sales areas through which they operate. In the intercompany stock transport order process, we'll first discuss intercompany stock transport order process. And that is, once you know that, you would easily understand what STO means, or a normal STO process is. So the only difference between STO and intercompany STO is that there will be a billing document that will be coming into picture, or a final invoice that will be coming into picture. Since this is a transaction between two company codes which have their own financial documents, there will be a billing transaction that comes into picture. And in this, there won't be a billing document. You can create a billing document on need basis. Usually, if need be, there are pro forma invoices created for the normal STO process. But for intercompany STO process, usually it is a mandate to have a, a intercompany billing document that generates postings, financial postings. As you see, I have firstly concentrated on these arrows that are there, and what they represent. Basically, this transaction happens between 4500 and 3000 company code. So these two company codes mm, are interacting with each other to have the product or the material transferred. So it's the company code 4500 which feels or has a need of procuring the material from its sister concern 3000 in order to fulfill the customer needs that are there in Canada. So basically what I've done is that this is a Canadian customer and this is a US customer. So I'll just, it's not a customer, it's the company code. Okay, I'm sorry. So Canadian customer and US company code. Sorry. Okay, so what Canadian company observes that it has a requirement from some customers in Canada wherein it has to deliver certain quantity of material. So it only has, let's say the requirement is of 100 products or 100 quantities, and it only has some 50 stored in its uh, warehouse, and it cannot fulfill the other 50 without you know making some production, and for producing these products it might take another 15-20 days. Hence, in order to satisfy this need of the end customers that are there in Canada, what Canadian company decides is that it will procure the material from plant 3000, and it is also aware that the Canadian plant has sufficient material. The US plant has sufficient material to satisfy the Canadian company's requirement. Hence, they'll place uh, PO, which is nothing but an intercompany stock transport order, to this purchasing organization. 4500 would place a PO to purchase order to the company code 3000. So based on this intercompany PO that company code 3000 receives, it will create a delivery, outbound delivery from plant 3000 to plant 4510. So you see this arrow mark, blue arrow mark represents that. This red or orange arrow mark represents the intercompany STO, or the PO that is being generated or sent by the company code 4500 to company code 3000. Upon receiving the PO, it will process the delivery, outbound delivery. The goods are received in plant 4510 of Canada once the delivery is made, and once the goods issue is complete and the goods receipt is complete, um, the company code 3000 generates a billing document, so that it could bill company code 4500 for the products that it has procured from them. And once the invoice is received by Canadian company 4500, it will complete the invoice receipt. So this is just a high level overview of what I am trying to explain today. Let's get more detailed and understand what all are the requirements to set up such a process. Basically, you need to have enterprise structure as defined or as shown up in this picture. Apart from that, there are certain requirements wherein um, you need to make some customization and create some master data. So firstly, let's talk about the master data that is required basically. So I'm assuming that you already know how an enterprise structure is set up in SAP, so I won't get into that. So I'll just explain the terms that are necessary for the intercompany, or the components that are necessary for the intercompany STO process. Basically, in this process, what is happening is that company code 3000 is acting as a vendor to company code 4500, and at the same time Canadian company 4500 is acting as a customer to company code 3000. So what happens is that when this company generates a PO to this company, so that means Canadian company generates a PO to US company, the US company acts as a vendor to the Canadian company, and hence the PO should have the vendor number that represents company code US. So you have to create a vendor for the Canadian company code in the purchase organization 4500, which represents the US company code. So as you see, I have an arrow from here to here. This is the vendor code that I have created in SAP, which is V3000, which represents company code 3000 as a vendor in company code Canada for purchase organization 4500. Okay, so the vendor, it is a bit tricky. I mean, because the way you have to set up a vendor is you have to be pretty much careful about it, and make sure that you attach a plant to this vendor. The plant would be the plant that is delivering the product. So I have given the same name like V3000, which would represent this plant in the company code 3000. So you need to attach the plant that will be providing the product to this company code. So when you create a vendor in this company code V3000, it should represent this plant and this company code basically. Now coming to the second requirement. Now what is the second requirement? As I said, 3000 company code or the US company code acts as a vendor to the Canadian company code. Similarly, the Canadian company code acts as a customer, or at the same time, the Canadian company acts as a customer to the US company code. So you need to create a customer to represent the Canadian company in the US company. So that means in the US company code, you have to create a customer which will represent the Canadian company code. So I have created a customer CU4510 and extended it to the sales area 301000 so that whenever I'm creating a billing document, the sales area that is represented should be represented by this sales area that is there in the billing document. So the customer, the final billing customer would be CU4510, which will represent the Canadian company code or this plant basically, and the sales area in which the billing document would be created would be this. That is, the billing document is being generated in this company code, the purchasing document is generated in this company code, delivery, outbound delivery happens in the created in this company code, and goods issue happens in this company code, while goods receipt happens in 4510, and invoice receipt is also happening in the Canadian company code. In order to have a clear picture of what I'm trying to explain, please don't get confused. It's might sound confusing, but yeah, when I show it to you in the system, most of the things would be clearer. So in order to make it more a little bit simplified, let me scroll down a bit. This process would make you clear of what I was talking about. In the purchase order, in the purchase order, you have the vendor V300, which represents company code 3000, and sorry, the outbound delivery happens from plant 3000. The stock is reduced after you do goods issue from plant 3000. In intercompany, billing is done to the customer CU 4510. In the sales area 3000, sorry, it's 301000. All right. So this is the intercompany billing document that is done. Goods receipt, sorry again. So goods receipt happens in company code 4500 in plant 4510. So 4510 represents the plant for 4500. Okay. So I'll just mention plant 4510. So that goods receipt, that means the stock is added for that particular material in plant 4510, and invoice verification happens in company code. So the invoice that I mean the company code 3000 sends to company code 4500, that is the Canadian company code, it will take the invoice and do the invoice verification and process the payment. So company code 4500 is the one who is receiving the invoice and processing the payment. So this is in short what I explained earlier. I hope this gives a clear picture of what is happening. So basically what I have represented below is the document types that you see, the document types that you see for each of the main uh, documents that are getting created in SAP. So you see, I have explained two document types, UB and NB. So let me go ahead with NB first because it is ISTO. So now what I'll represent is that ISTO represents Inter-Company STO, while STO represents Intra-Company STO. Keep that in mind. So ISTO, you have the purchase order document type as NB, which is a standard purchase order document. Uh, you have the outbound delivery type N NLCC, which is a replenishment delivery. So for this outbound delivery, you have the item category determined as NLC. Sorry, NL. Yeah, I'll check that and let you know. But meanwhile, let's see the billing document type. Intercompany billing document type that is generated would be IV. In this case, there won't be any intercompany billing document, so it will stop here. F8. Uh, you would just have a pro forma invoice. I've just represented a pro forma invoice that is generated. So IV is nothing but, as you know, it's a intercompany standard intercompany billing document, which is already available in IRIS or any SAP system. So probably this might clear your doubts that you had until now. So this is what I was trying to explain. So basically, the company, the US company represents a vendor V3000 to Canadian company code, and the plant 4510 represents a customer to company to the US company code. So I've shown this arrow marks so that to make you aware that what exactly I'm trying to explain. The arrow marks represent that this customer should be created in this sales area of this company code. So basically the customer has to be created for company code 3000 and sales area 301000. The vendor V3000 should be created for company code 4500 and purchase org 4500. Okay, so and the main thing I missed out on explaining or didn't cover during explanation is the material. So you have to have a common material that is being produced in each of the plants of the company codes. So there is a common material that is being produced in Canada as well as US. That material is the material that I have created is 938. The material, of course, should exist in each of the plants, 3000 as well as 4510. And yes, the material should also exist in this sales area, the selling company codes sales area, 301000. Okay. And probably it should also exist in this sales area because if you are going to sell it to the end customer, this is the sales area that would be used. If Canadian company wants to sell this procured material to an end customer, then he has to use this sales area. So in that case, it should exist in the sales areas. So better to have this material available in both the plants or extended to both the plants 3000 and 4510 and sales areas 3000, the US sales area as well as the Canadian sales area. Okay, so this is about the process that we were talking until now. So I would stop the first part of the session here so that you just digest uh, the things I have explained here. And in the next section of this video, uh, I would explain the customizing. And once the customizing part is explained or the master data creation part is explained, there will be a third video to it wherein I'll explain the processes. The reason I'm keeping the videos short is that it shouldn't get boring, and if I have videos for hours, it will be monotonous and it'll people might lose interest. So probably I'll just stop here and create another video. Thank you guys.